A night alone with her boss ignited a passion she could no longer hide. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start. The snow fell like whispered secrets against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ward Industries' 42nd floor, each flake catching the amber glow of Chicago's skyline before dissolving into the darkness. Sailor Monroe pressed her palm against the cold glass, watching the city blur into impressionist streaks of light and shadow. At 9:47 p.m., the building should have been empty, but here she was, again, making sure every detail of tomorrow's board presentation was perfect. "Still here, Miss Monroe?" The voice sent a familiar shiver down her spine. Cassian Ward's reflection appeared in the window behind her, his tall frame filling the doorway of his corner office. Even after 3 years of working as his executive assistant, Sella's heart still performed that same rebellious flutter whenever he spoke her name. "Just reviewing the Morrison account projections," she replied, turning to face him. "I wanted to make sure." The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the office space, and somewhere in the distance, the building's generator hummed to life. But their floor remained dark, save for the glow of the city beyond the windows. "Perfect," Cassian muttered, his voice carrying that familiar edge of frustration that appeared whenever something disrupted his carefully controlled world. "And the storm must have knocked out the main grid." Sella fumbled for her phone's flashlight, its weak beam dancing across the mahogany furniture. "I'll call building security and see how long." "No signal." Cassian held up his own phone, its screen showing 0 bars. The storms interfering with the towers. They stood in the semi-darkness, the weight of 3 years of professional distance suddenly feeling as fragile as spun glass. Zillah had mastered the art of being indispensable yet invisible, anticipating Cassian's needs while keeping her own carefully buried. But something about the darkness, the isolation, the way the storm seemed to have wrapped them in their own private world, made those barriers feel permeable. "There's an emergency kit in the conference room," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Candles, basic supplies. Lead the way." The conference room adjoined Cassian's office, its long table usually the stage for high-stakes negotiations and strategic planning. Tonight, it felt intimate, almost sacred. Sella located the emergency supplies in a cabinet she'd stocked months ago, another one of her countless behind-the-scenes contributions that kept the office running smoothly. As she lit the first candle, warm light flickered across her face, and she caught Cassian watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. Not the polite appreciation of a boss for his efficient assistant, but something deeper, more complex. "You think of everything," he said quietly. "It's my job." But even as she said it, the words felt hollow. Was it really just her job that made her care so much about his comfort, his success, his rare moments of genuine laughter? Is it? The question hung between them like the candle smoke, delicate and impossible to ignore. Sella set down the lighter, her hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Ward." "Cassian." His voice was rough, uncertain. "It's just us here. No board members, no clients, no—" He gestured vaguely at the darkened office beyond. "No performances." The word hit her like a physical blow. Performances. Was that what these 3 years had been? An elaborate dance of professional courtesy, masking the electricity that sparked between them every time their hands accidentally touched, while passing documents, every time their eyes met across the conference table during long meetings. "I found wine," she said suddenly, desperate to break the tension. In the emergency cabinet sat a bottle of red wine, probably left over from some corporate event, and glasses. Emergency wine. Despite everything, Cassian's mouth curved into the ghost of a smile. "You never know when you might need to toast surviving a power outage." She poured 2 glasses, her hands steadier now that she had a task to focus on. The wine was decent, better than she'd expected, and as they sat across from each other at the conference table, the formal space transformed into something that felt dangerously close to a date. Tell me something I don't know about you, Cassian said, his fingers wrapped around the wine glass. The candlelight softened his usually sharp features, making him look younger, more approachable. I don't think that's appropriate. Nothing's appropriate about this situation. He leaned forward slightly. We're trapped together until morning, probably. The rules are suspended. Sela took a sip of wine, feeling it warm her chest. I wanted to be a writer once, she admitted. Before I moved to Chicago, I thought I'd write the great American novel while working a day job to pay rent. What happened? Life. Bills. The day job turned into a career, and the novel turned into a file on my laptop that I haven't opened in 2 years. Do you regret it? The question was simple, but the way he asked it, as if her answer truly mattered to him, made her chest tighten. I don't know. Do you regret taking over the company so young? Every day. The admission seemed to surprise him. I never wanted to be CEO. I wanted to be an architect, design buildings instead of running board meetings. What changed? My father died. Suddenly, I was responsible for 3,000 employees and a legacy I'd never asked for. He drained his wine glass. Some days, I feel like I'm playing dress-up in his office, pretending to be someone I'm not. In 3 years, Sela had never heard him speak so openly about himself. The wine, the darkness, the strange intimacy of their situation, it was stripping away all the careful layers they'd both built around themselves. You're not pretending, she said softly. You're one of the most genuine people I know. You don't know me, Sela. Not really. I know you stay late reviewing every proposal because you care about the impact on employees. I know you remember everyone's birthdays and their children's names. I know you donated anonymously to the Cancer Research Fund when Patricia in accounting was diagnosed. She paused, meeting his eyes. I know you better than you think. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the city, but inside their candle-lit sanctuary, time seemed suspended. Sela, he said, and her name on his lips sounded different, tender, questioning. Yes? What are we doing? The question encompassed everything, the wine, the confessions, the way the space between them seemed to shrink with each passing moment. She could give him the safe answer, the professional one. She could blame the wine, the circumstances, the strange magic of the storm. Instead, she told him the truth. I don't know. But I don't want it to stop. The confession hung in the air between them like morning mist, beautiful, dangerous, and impossible to take back. Cassian's eyes searched hers in the flickering candlelight, and Sela saw her own uncertainty reflected there, mixed with something that made her pulse quicken. We should talk about something else, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Should we? Sela surprised herself with her boldness. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was 3 years of careful restraint finally reaching its breaking point. What if I don't want to pretend anymore? Cassian set down his wineglass with deliberate care. Sela, you work for me. There are rules, protocols. Suspended, remember? She echoed his earlier words. You said so yourself. He stood abruptly, pacing to the windows where the storm painted abstract patterns against the glass. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. I can't. He stopped, his hands clenched at his sides. I won't be responsible for ruining your career, your reputation, everything you've worked for. What if I'm willing to risk it? He turned, and the raw vulnerability in his expression made her breath catch. What if I'm not willing to let you? The words hit her like a physical blow. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady, whether from the wine or the emotional vertigo, she couldn't tell. You don't get to make that choice for me, Cassian. Don't I? His voice was rough, strained. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch you every day, to depend on you, to... He cut himself off, running a hand through his dark hair. You're the one constant in my life that makes sense. I can't risk losing that. You're not losing anything. Yes, I am. He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne, that subtle scent that had haunted her dreams for 3 years. Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. And when it inevitably falls apart, because it will, Selam, these things always do, I'll lose the only person who really sees me. You're so certain it will fail. I'm certain I'll destroy it. The admission seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him. I destroyed my marriage. I destroyed my relationship with my brother. I destroy everything I touch that matters. Sayla's heart clenched at the pain in his voice. She reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing his cheek. You haven't destroyed me. Yet, but he didn't pull away from her touch. If anything, he leaned into it, his eyes closing briefly. God, Sayla, do you know how many times I've imagined this? How many times I've had to stop myself from walking into your office and just what? Just telling you that you're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing on my mind before I sleep. That I notice everything about you. How you bite your lip when you're concentrating. How you hum softly when you think no one's listening. How your eyes light up when you laugh. His voice dropped to a whisper. That I'm falling in love with you and it terrifies me. The words hit her like lightning, illuminating every dark corner of her heart. Cassian, I shouldn't have said that. Yes, you should have. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. And because I've been in love with you for 2 years, and it's been killing me to pretend otherwise. His hands found her waist, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. This is madness. Maybe. She looked up at him, memorizing every detail of his face in the candlelight. But I'm tired of being sensible. I'm tired of safe choices and appropriate behavior. For once in my life, I want to do something just because it feels right. And this feels right to you. More right than anything I've ever done. The space between them disappeared. His mouth found hers in a kiss that was nothing like the gentle, questioning touch she'd imagined. It was desperate, hungry, 3 years of suppressed longing unleashed in a single moment. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he responded by lifting her onto the conference table, his lips never leaving hers. Sayla, he breathed against her mouth, her name a prayer and a curse. Don't stop, she whispered back. Please don't stop. Time became fluid, measured not in minutes but in heartbeats, in the soft sounds she made when his lips found the sensitive spot at the base of her throat, in the way he groaned when her fingers tangled in his hair. The storm outside seemed to mirror the tempest building between them, wild and uncontrollable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sayla rested her forehead against his chest. His heart was racing as fast as hers, and she took comfort in that shared vulnerability. What happens now? She asked quietly. I don't know. His arms tightened around her. I've never been in this situation before. What situation? Being trapped in an office during a storm. Being with someone who matters this much. The honesty in his voice made her look up. I matter to you. You matter to me more than I know how to handle. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones, which is why we need to be careful, smart about this. Smart how? We keep this between us, at least until we figure out what it means, where it's going. His expression grew serious. If word gets out, it won't just affect us. The board, the employees, the company. I understand. She did, even if part of her rebelled against the secrecy. But Cassian, I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me you won't wake up tomorrow and pretend this never happened. Promise me you won't retreat behind your CEO mask and treat me like this was just a moment of weakness. He studied her face for a long moment, then leaned down to kiss her softly. I promise. But you have to promise me something too. What? Promise me that if this gets too complicated, if it starts affecting your career or your happiness, you'll tell me that you won't sacrifice yourself for whatever this is between us. I promise. Outside, the storm was beginning to weaken, though snow still fell steadily against the windows. They settled onto the leather couch in the corner of the conference room. Sayla curled against Cassian's side, his arm around her shoulders. It felt natural, right? As if they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. Tell me about your novel, he said softly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. It's about a woman who inherits a bookstore in a small town and discovers letters hidden in the walls, love letters spanning decades, all from people who worked there before her. That sounds beautiful. It probably sounds better than it is. I'm not sure I remember how to write anymore. Maybe you just need the right inspiration. She tilted her head to look at him. Is that what you are? My inspiration? I could be if you'd let me. The offer was simple, but it carried weight, the promise of support, of belief in her dreams, of a future that extended beyond stolen moments in darkened offices. I'd like that, she said. Good. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Because I have a feeling we're going to need all the inspiration we can get. As the night wore on and the storm gradually exhausted itself, they talked about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, dreams deferred, the strange twist of fate that had brought them together in this moment. By the time the first pale light of dawn began to filter through the windows, they had crossed more than just professional boundaries. They had crossed into territory that was uncharted, dangerous, and absolutely worth the risk. The harsh fluorescent lights flickered back to life at 6:47 a.m., jolting Sela from the peaceful drowse she'd fallen into against Cassian's chest. Reality crashed over her like ice water. The conference room, the scattered candles, the way her hair had escaped its professional chignon and now fell in waves around her shoulders. "That turned the powers back," she said unnecessarily, her voice rough with sleep and intimacy. Cassian's arm tightened around her for just a moment before he carefully extracted himself from their embrace. So it is. She watched him transform in real time, the soft expression from moments ago replaced by the familiar mask of professional composure. But she caught the slight tremor in his hands as he straightened his tie, the way his eyes avoided hers as he moved to blow out the remaining candles. "Cassian," she stood, smoothing down her wrinkled blouse. "You're doing it already." "Doing what?" "Retreating. Pretending last night was just... Last night was..." He paused, finally meeting her eyes. "Last night was the most honest I've been in years. But this morning, we have to be smart about this." The elevator dinged in the distance, followed by the sound of voices, the cleaning crew arriving for their early shift. The real world was intruding on their sanctuary, and with it came all the complications they'd managed to forget in the darkness. "I should go," Sela said, gathering her purse and jacket. "Freshen up before everyone else arrives." "Sela, wait!" Cassian caught her hand as she moved toward the door. His thumb traced across her knuckles, and the simple touch sent electricity up her arm. "This isn't over. What happened between us? It's not something I can just forget. But you want to try. I want to protect you." His voice was fierce, urgent. "Do you understand what would happen if anyone suspected? The board would see it as a liability. The employees would question every decision you've helped me make. Your professional reputation would be destroyed, and mine wouldn't be far behind." She wanted to argue, to tell him that she didn't care about any of that. But the rational part of her mind, the part that had worked so hard to build her career, knew he was right. Ward Industries was a traditional company with traditional values. Office romances between executives and their assistants were the stuff of HR nightmares and tabloid scandals. "So what are you suggesting? We take this slow. We figure out what we want, away from the office, away from prying eyes and corporate politics. And here, during the day, here, we're professional, careful." He lifted their joined hands, pressing a soft kiss to her palm. "But that doesn't mean we're pretending it didn't happen." The voices in the hallway grew closer. With reluctance, Sela pulled her hand free and headed for the door. "Only I'll see you at the board meeting at 9. "Sela," she paused, looking back at him. In the harsh office lighting, he looked exactly like the CEO she'd worked for these past 3 years. Commanding, controlled, untouchable. But she could see the truth in his eyes now, the vulnerability he'd shown her in the candlelight. "Yes, thank you. For last night, for seeing me." Her heart clenched. "And thank you for letting me." 2 hours later, Sela sat in her usual spot at the conference table, a fresh cup of coffee in hand, and her hair pulled back into its customary neat bun. She'd gone home, showered, changed into a crisp navy dress, and applied makeup to cover the telltale flush that seemed to linger on her cheeks. To anyone looking, she was the same efficient, professional assistant she'd always been. But everything felt different. She was hyper-aware of every glance Cassian sent her way, every accidental brush of their fingers when she handed him documents. When he asked her to stay after the meeting to discuss the Morrison account, her pulse quickened even though she knew it was legitimate business. "The projections look good," he said once they were alone, but his eyes were on her face, not the spreadsheet. "I made some adjustments based on the fourth quarter numbers." She kept her voice steady, professional. "I think we can improve the profit margin by another 3% if we restructure the delivery timeline." "You're brilliant, you know that." The compliment, delivered in his low, intimate voice, made her cheeks warm. "Cassian, we agreed. We agreed to be careful. Not to pretend you're not the most intelligent, capable woman I've ever worked with." "Is that what you told your wife?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, and she immediately regretted it. Cassian's expression shuttered, the warmth disappearing from his eyes. "That's not fair." "You're right. I'm sorry." She set down her pen, meeting his gaze. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be professional with you when all I can think about is—" "I know." His voice was rough. "I can't stop thinking about it either. About you." The admission hung between them, dangerous and electric. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Cassian's intercom buzzed. "Mr. Ward, your 10:30 appointment is here," his temporary receptionist announced. "Send them in," he replied, his CEO mask sliding back into place. As the door opened to admit a team of lawyers, Sela gathered her files and prepared to leave. But as she passed Cassian's chair, she felt his hand briefly touch hers, a fleeting contact that anyone else would dismiss as accidental. But she knew better, and the small smile that curved her lips as she left the conference room told her that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. The day continued with its usual rhythm of meetings, phone calls, and administrative tasks. But underneath the surface, Sela felt like she was living a double life, professional assistant by day, woman in love by night. The dichotomy was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. At 5:30, as the office began to empty, Cassian appeared at her desk with his coat and briefcase. "Good night, Miss Monroe," he said formally. But as he walked past, he dropped a small piece of paper beside her keyboard. "Dinner tomorrow," was written in his distinctive handwriting, followed by an address she didn't recognize. Sela looked up to find him watching her from the elevator. She gave him the slightest nod, and the smile that crossed his face was worth every risk they were taking. As the elevator doors closed, she realized that she was no longer the same woman who had arrived at work that morning. The storm had changed more than just the weather. It had changed everything. The address Cassian had given her led to a small Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park, the kind of intimate place that felt like a secret tucked away from the bustling city. Sela stood outside for a moment, her breath forming small clouds in the cold evening air, second-guessing her choice of a deep emerald dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. Through the frosted windows, she could see warm light and couples leaning across small tables, lost in conversation. This was real, not stolen moments in a darkened office, but an actual date. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "You look stunning." She turned to find Cassian approaching from the street, and her heart did that familiar flutter. He wore a charcoal wool coat over dark jeans and a sweater, casual clothes that somehow made him look younger, more approachable than his usual business attire. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she said, accepting his offered arm. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either." The honesty slipped out before she could stop it. "This feels terrifying." "Yes, but also right." The hostess led them to a corner table barely big enough for two, its surface illuminated by a single candle. The restaurant was exactly the kind of place where they were unlikely to run into anyone from Ward Industries. Small, unassuming, frequented by locals rather than the downtown business crowd. "How did you find this place?" Sela asked as they settled into their seats. I used to come here with my brother. Before, he trailed off, a shadow crossing his face. Before what? Before I took over the company, and we stopped speaking. Cassian's fingers played with his water glass. He thought I was abandoning everything I believed in, becoming our father. Maybe he was right. What was your father like? Brilliant, ruthless, completely devoted to the company at the expense of everything else. He met her eyes, including his family. The waiter appeared to take their order, and Sela found herself studying Cassian's face as he spoke. There was pain there, old wounds that had never properly healed. She was beginning to understand that his fear of destroying relationships wasn't just paranoia, it was learned behavior. Tell me about your brother, she said, once they were alone again. Liam's an artist, lives in Portland now, makes furniture with his hands, grows his own vegetables. Everything I used to think I wanted before I got trapped in boardrooms and profit margins. Trapped. Wrong word. Chose. I chose this life. But his voice lacked conviction. Did you? Or did you just accept what was expected of you? The question seemed to catch him off guard. You don't pull punches, do you? Not anymore. She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. Life's too short to waste time on polite evasions. His thumb traced across her knuckles. When did you become so wise? Probably around the time I fell in love with my boss and decided to throw caution to the wind. The words hung between them, bold and unguarded. She'd said it so casually, but the weight of the admission settled over the table like a blanket. Sela, I'm not asking you to say it back, she said quickly. I wanted you to know. I'm tired of hiding how I feel. I'm not good at this, he said quietly. Love, relationships. I mess them up. Maybe you just haven't found the right person to mess up with. Despite everything, he laughed. Is that what we're doing? Messing up together, among other things. Their food arrived, simple pasta dishes that neither of them paid much attention to. They were too busy talking, learning about each other beyond the careful boundaries of their professional relationship. Sela told him about growing up in small-town Wisconsin, about parents who loved each other fiercely but never quite understood their daughter's ambition. Cassian shared stories from his childhood before the weight of expectation settled on his shoulders. I used to build things, he said, twirling pasta around his fork. Tree houses, go-karts, elaborate Lego cities. I'd spend hours getting every detail perfect. You still do that, just with business deals instead of building blocks. It's not the same, isn't it? You're still creating something, still making sure every detail is perfect. The scale is just different. He considered this, a slow smile spreading across his face. You have a way of making everything sound more meaningful than it is. Or maybe you have a way of making everything sound less meaningful than it is. After dinner, they walked through the park despite the cold, their hands intertwined, their breath mingling in the frigid air. The city lights twinkled around them like stars, and for a moment, Sela could almost forget about the complications waiting for them. I have a confession, Cassian said as they paused beside a frozen pond. Another one. I've been planning this for weeks. Not this specific date, but some way to spend time with you outside the office. I kept making excuses to myself, telling myself it was inappropriate, unprofessional. He turned to face her fully. But the truth is, I've been half in love with you since your first week on the job. Only half. Completely in love since about month 3. I just didn't want to admit it. What changed your mind? You did. The storm, yes, but also just you. The way you challenge me, the way you see possibilities I've forgotten existed. The way you make me want to be better than I am. She stood on her tiptoes to kiss him, tasting wine and possibility and the promise of something that might actually last. When they broke apart, both were breathless. So what happens now? She asked. Now we figure out how to make this work without destroying everything we've both worked for. Together. As they walked back to their cars, Sela felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for herself, but for them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever complications their relationship might create, she was ready to face them. She was ready to fight for love. 3 weeks passed in a delicate dance of stolen glances and secret text messages. Selah had become a master of compartmentalization, the picture of professionalism during board meetings, while her heart raced every time Cassian's fingers brushed hers as he handed her documents. Their evenings belonged to them. Quiet dinners at out-of-the-way restaurants, long walks along Lake Michigan, hours spent talking about everything except work. It felt like living 2 lives, and Selah was surprised by how naturally she adapted to the deception. Until the morning, she walked into the office to find Victoria Chen, Ward Industries, sharp-eyed CFO, standing by the reception desk with a knowing smile. "Selah, dear, you look radiant lately," Victoria said, her tone deceptively casual. "That glow, new skincare routine." "Just getting more sleep," Selah replied, forcing a smile as she hung up her coat. "Winter tends to make me hibernate." Victoria's eyes were calculating. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up, though I do hope you're not burning the candle at both ends. I know how demanding Cassian can be." The comment felt loaded with subtext, but before Selah could respond, Victoria was already walking toward the elevator, her heels clicking authoritatively against the marble floor. "Everything all right?" Diana Rodriguez, the head of marketing, appeared at Selah's elbow with 2 cups of coffee. At 38, Diana had worked her way up from junior associate to department head through sheer determination and political savvy. Victoria was just being Victoria. "Ah," Diana handed her a coffee. "Word of advice. Victoria Chen notices everything. If she's paying attention to you, there's a reason." The warning sent a chill down Selah's spine that had nothing to do with the Chicago winter. "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's been asking questions about the dynamics in the executive wing. Who's been working late? Who's been taking longer lunches? That sort of thing." Diana lowered her voice. "Between you and me, I think she's positioning herself for something. Maybe gunning for CEO if Cassian ever stumbles." The elevator chimed, and Cassian emerged with his usual confident stride. His eyes found Selah's immediately, a quick moment of connection before he switched to professional mode. "Good morning, ladies," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Hey, Diana, I'll need those Q1 projections before the 3 o'clock meeting." "Already on your desk," Diana replied. "Selah's been keeping me organized. She has a talent for that." There was warmth in his voice that made Selah's chest tighten. Too much warmth for a boss discussing his assistant. Diana's eyes flicked between them with newfound interest, and Selah realized their cover was starting to slip. The day proceeded normally until lunch, when Selah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Conference room B now. V. Victoria." How had she gotten Selah's personal number? Conference room B was on the 20th floor, away from the executive wing. When Selah arrived, Victoria was already seated at the small table, a manila folder spread open before her. "Close the door," Victoria said without looking up. Selah's hands were trembling as she pulled the door shut. "What can I help you with, Victoria?" "You can help me understand this." Victoria slid a photograph across the table. Selah's blood turned to ice. It was a picture of her and Cassian at the Italian restaurant, their hands intertwined across the table, their faces close together in intimate conversation. The photo was grainy, clearly taken from outside through the window, but there was no mistaking what it showed. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter?" Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying Selah's face. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "We." "Oh, my dear, you misunderstand. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to make you an offer." Selah sank into the chair across from Victoria, her mind reeling. "What kind of offer?" "The kind that benefits us both. You see, I've been watching Cassian for months, waiting for him to make a mistake. His father was a brilliant businessman, but a terrible judge of character when it came to personal relationships. I was hoping the son had inherited the same weakness." "Cassian isn't his father." "No, he's worse. He's emotional, sentimental. Look at how he's restructured the company. Profit margins down, employee satisfaction up. He's running Ward Industries like a charity instead of a business. Those changes have improved company culture and reduced turnover. Spare me the HR propaganda. Victoria's smile was razor sharp. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue your little romance, but you're also going to start feeding me information, board meeting discussions, strategic plans, client negotiations. Everything that crosses Cassian's desk. You want me to spy on him? I want you to be smart about your future. Do you really think this relationship is going anywhere? He's the CEO of a major corporation, and you're his assistant. When the board finds out, and they will find out, who do you think they'll sacrifice to avoid a scandal? The words hit Sela like physical blows. She'd been so caught up in the romance of their secret relationship that she'd ignored the harsh realities of corporate politics. I won't betray him, even if it means losing everything. Your job, your reputation, your career. Victoria gathered the photos back into the folder. Think about it, Sela. You're a smart woman, smart enough to know that fairy tales don't exist in boardrooms. What do you get out of this? Insurance. When Cassian inevitably crashes and burns, I'll be ready to step in. The board will need someone they can trust, someone who puts the company first. Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. You have until Friday to decide. Help me, or watch your life implode in spectacular fashion. After Victoria left, Sela sat alone in the conference room, staring at her hands. Everything she'd built, everything she'd worked for, hung in the balance. The smart choice was obvious. Protect herself, cooperate with Victoria, minimize the damage. But as she thought about Cassian's smile, about the way he'd looked at her across the candlelit table just last night, about the plans they'd started making for a future together, she realized the smart choice wasn't always the right choice. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Cassian. We need to talk tonight. Some battles were worth fighting, even when the odds were stacked against you, especially then. Victoria Chen had just declared war, but she'd underestimated her opponent. Sela Monroe wasn't just going to roll over and surrender, she was going to fight back. Cassian's apartment on the Gold Coast was a study in controlled elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, minimalist furniture, and artwork that spoke of careful curation rather than personal attachment. Sela had been there twice before, but tonight the space felt different, charged with the urgency of what she needed to tell him. You look like you've seen a ghost, Cassian said, taking her coat and studying her face with concern. What happened? We have a problem. A big one. She moved to the windows, watching the city lights blur through her unshed tears. Victoria knows about us. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. When she turned, Cassian's face had gone completely white. How? Photos of us at dinner last week. She pulled out her phone, showing him the picture Victoria had forwarded as a reminder of their conversation. Someone's been following us. Cassian sank onto his leather couch, running both hands through his hair. Damn it! I should have been more careful. I should have... This isn't your fault, isn't it? I'm the one who insisted we keep this secret. I'm the one who thought we could have our cake and eat it too. His voice was bitter, self-recriminating. What does Victoria want? Sela sat beside him, her hands clenched in her lap. She wants me to spy on you. Feed her information about board meetings, strategic plans, client negotiations, everything. And if you refuse, she'll expose us to the board, destroy both our careers. Sela met his eyes. She's positioning herself to replace you, Cassian. She thinks you're too soft, too emotional to run the company effectively. She's probably right. Don't you dare. The fierce protectiveness in her voice surprised them both. Don't you dare let her make you doubt yourself. You've transformed that company in ways your father never could. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. We've landed 3 major contracts this quarter, and profit margins are down 12%. Short-term losses for long-term gains. You know that. Cassian stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe we should end this before it gets worse. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. What matters is protecting you. Stop! She followed him, catching his arm and forcing him to face her. Stop making decisions for me. Stop assuming you know what's best for everyone. I'm not some fragile flower who needs protecting. You don't understand what you're up against. Victoria Chen is ruthless. She'll destroy you just to get to me. Then we destroy her first. The words hung in the air between them, dangerous and electric. Cassian stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. Selah, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop playing defense and start playing offense. You said Victoria's been looking for a mistake, something to use against you. What if we gave her what she wanted, but on our terms? I don't follow. Selah moved to his kitchen, needing something to do with her hands while her mind worked. Victoria thinks I'm going to cave, give her information to save myself. What if I do, but the information is carefully chosen? What if we feed her exactly what we want her to know? You want to double-cross her. I want to outmaneuver her. She turned to face him, her eyes bright with determination. You're not the only one who's good at strategy, Cassian. I've been watching corporate politics for 3 years. I know how this game is played. It's too dangerous. If she finds out, she won't, because we're going to give her something so tempting, so perfectly crafted to her agenda, that she won't question the source. Cassian was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him turning the idea over in his mind. What kind of information? I don't know yet, but there has to be something. Some project or deal that would benefit from her interference, some way to make her think she's winning while actually serving our purposes. The Henderson merger. What about it? It's been stalled for weeks because Henderson's CEO doesn't trust our financial projections. He thinks we're too aggressive, too willing to sacrifice stability for growth. Cassian's eyes met hers, and she could see the wheels turning. But if he heard those concerns from someone inside our own company, someone like Victoria, who's known for being conservative with numbers. Exactly. If Victoria thought she was sabotaging the deal by expressing concerns to Henderson, she might actually help us close it. Henderson respects her reputation. Selah felt a thrill of excitement at the elegant simplicity of it. We feed her information about internal doubts regarding the merger. She takes it to Henderson, thinking she's undermining you. Henderson sees it as honest internal assessment and feels more confident about moving forward. It could work. But then Cassian's expression darkened. Or it could backfire spectacularly. If Victoria realizes what we're doing, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Cassian, we can't keep running scared. We can't let her hold this over us forever. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. When did you become so devious? I learned from the best. You've been playing corporate chess for years. This is different. This is personal. All the more reason to win. They spent the next hour crafting their strategy, identifying exactly what information to share and how to make it seem believable. It felt like old times, working together, their minds perfectly synchronized, building something larger than either could create alone. There's something else, Selah said, as they finalized their plan. Diana Rodriguez suspects something. She warned me that Victoria's been asking questions. Diana's sharp, and she has no love for Victoria. Cassian considered this. She might be an ally, or another person who could expose us, one problem at a time. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. Are you sure about this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, even if it means putting your career at risk. My career doesn't mean anything without you in it. The words came out more vulnerable than she'd intended, but she didn't take them back. I love you, Cassian, all of you. The CEO, the man who builds things, the person who cares too much about everyone else's happiness. I'm not walking away from that. I love you too. He said it simply, without hesitation, and her heart soared. Which is why we're going to make this work. Victoria Chen has no idea what she started. As they sealed their alliance with a kiss that tasted like rebellion and possibility, Sela felt a fierce joy burning in her chest. They were about to play the most dangerous game of their lives, and they were going to win. The next morning, Sela walked into Ward Industries with the careful composure of someone carrying explosives. Every step was measured, every expression calculated. She had 48 hours to convince Victoria that she was capitulating, while actually setting a trap that could save both their careers or destroy them completely. "You look better today," Diana observed as they waited for the elevator. "Yesterday you seemed tense, just some personal stress. Nothing work-related." The lie came easier than Sela expected. She was becoming someone who could compartmentalize, who could smile while planning corporate warfare. "Good to hear." "Oh, and Sela." Diana's voice dropped to a whisper as the elevator doors opened. "Be careful around Victoria. I heard she's been asking HR about protocols for reporting inappropriate workplace relationships." The warning sent ice through Sela's veins, but she managed to keep her expression neutral. "Thanks for the heads up." As the elevator climbed toward the executive floor, Sela's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Have you made your decision?" She typed back, "Meet me for coffee at 11. We need to discuss terms." The response came immediately. "Smart girl." At 11 sharp, Sela sat across from Victoria at a small cafe 6 blocks from the office. Victoria looked pleased with herself, like a cat who'd cornered a particularly interesting mouse. "I'm glad you came to your senses," Victoria said, stirring sugar into her latte. "This arrangement will benefit us both." "I want guarantees," Sela said, forcing her voice to sound defeated rather than determined. "If I do this, I need to know my job is secure. As long as you're useful to me, you'll be protected. But Sela, dear, let's be clear about one thing. This isn't a partnership. This is you recognizing reality." Sela nodded, letting Victoria see resignation in her posture. Inside, her mind was cataloguing every word, every expression, building a case for the future. "What do you want to know first?" "The Henderson merger. I know Cassian's been struggling to close it. What's the real story?" This was it. The moment their plan either worked or fell apart. Sela took a shaky breath, as if admitting something she shouldn't. He's panicking. The numbers don't add up the way he projected, and he's desperate to make it work anyway. Yesterday he asked me to adjust some of the financial projections before sending them to Henderson. Victoria's eyes sharpened. "Adjust how?" "Make the risk assessment look more favorable than it actually is. Hide some of the debt Henderson would be taking on." Sela looked around nervously, as if afraid of being overheard. "I told him I wasn't comfortable with it, but he said it was just strategic presentation." "That's fraud." "That's what I thought. But I can't refuse without raising suspicions about why I'm suddenly questioning his judgment." Victoria leaned back, her smile predatory. "Poor Cassian, so eager to prove himself that he's willing to compromise his ethics. His father would be ashamed." "What should I do?" "Give me copies of the real numbers and the adjusted ones. I'll handle the rest." "You're going to expose him." "I'm going to save Henderson from making a terrible mistake, and in the process show the board that Cassian lacks the judgment necessary to lead this company." Sela nodded reluctantly, hating every word she had to say. "I'll get you the documents by tomorrow." "Excellent." And Sela, this conversation never happened. Back at the office, Sela found Cassian in his office, genuinely reviewing Henderson merger documents. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was about to fabricate evidence of financial manipulation while he sat there conducting legitimate business. "How did it go?" he asked quietly, not looking up from his papers. She took the bait. "She thinks you're cooking the books on Henderson." Sela closed the door behind her, then moved to his desk. "She wants the real numbers and the adjusted ones by tomorrow. And we're going to give them to her. We're going to give her exactly what she expects to see. Conservative projections that make the merger look risky, and more optimistic ones that seem artificially inflated. She'll take the conservative numbers to Henderson as evidence of your desperation. What if Henderson actually backs out?" "He won't. You said yourself he respects Victoria's reputation for financial caution. When she comes to him with concerns, He'll see it as due diligence, not sabotage. It'll actually increase his confidence in the deal. Cassian was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming against the desk. This could work. But Sela, if Victoria realizes what we're doing, she won't. She's too invested in seeing you fail to question information that supports her narrative. And if you're wrong, then we'll face the consequences together. The intercom buzzed, interrupting them. Mr. Ward, Mr. Henderson is on line 2. He says it's urgent. Cassian and Sela exchanged glances. Put him through. Cassian, good to hear your voice. Henderson's familiar baritone filled the office. I've been thinking about our merger discussions, and I've decided to move forward. Can we schedule a signing meeting for next week? Sela's heart stopped. If Henderson was ready to sign now, before Victoria had a chance to approach him with her concerns, their entire plan would fall apart. That's wonderful news, Richard, Cassian said smoothly. Though I want to make sure we've addressed all your concerns. Perhaps we should schedule one more review meeting. Make sure all parties are completely comfortable with the terms. I appreciate the thoroughness, but I'm confident in the numbers. Your CFO reached out yesterday with some additional financial analysis that really put my mind at ease. Sela felt the blood drain from her face. Victoria had already made contact. Victoria called you. Cassian's voice remained steady, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the phone. Yesterday afternoon, she wanted to discuss some internal projections. Make sure I had the full picture. I have to say, her conservative estimates actually made me more confident in the deal. If your own CFO is being cautious and the merger still looks profitable, that tells me you're not overselling it. Cassian met Sela's eyes, and she saw her own amazement reflected there. It had worked. Victoria's attempt to sabotage the merger had actually secured it. I'm glad Victoria could provide that perspective, Cassian said. Shall we say Tuesday at 2 for the signing? Perfect. And Cassian, give my regards to Victoria. Her financial analysis was exemplary. After Henderson hung up, Cassian and Sela stared at each other in stunned silence. She did exactly what we predicted, Sela said finally. Better than we predicted. She's probably expecting him to call and cancel the merger any moment. Instead, she handed us a victory. The question is, what do we do now? She's going to expect more information, more opportunities to undermine me. Sela moved around the desk, placing her hands on his shoulders. Now we give her enough rope to hang herself, but carefully, one move at a time. I love your devious mind. Good, she said, leaning down to kiss him softly. Because we're just getting started. Outside his office, the corporate world continued its relentless pace, unaware that two people in love had just won the first battle in a war that would determine not just their future, but the soul of Ward Industries itself. The trap was set beautifully, but Victoria Chen was more dangerous when cornered than they had anticipated. Sela discovered this the hard way when she arrived at work Monday morning to find her computer access revoked and a security guard waiting at her desk. "Ms. Monroe, please gather your personal belongings," the guard said, his voice professionally neutral, but his presence unmistakably intimidating. "HR needs to see you immediately." The walk to Human Resources felt like a death march. Every employee she passed averted their eyes, and the whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when she appeared told her that word of her disgrace had already spread through the building's gossip network. Margaret Walsh, the head of HR, was waiting with a thick folder and an expression of disappointed authority. Beside her sat Victoria, looking like she'd just won the lottery. "Please, sit down, Sela," Margaret said. "We need to discuss some serious allegations that have come to our attention." "What kind of allegations?" Victoria leaned forward, her smile sharp as a blade. "The kind that involve inappropriate relationships between supervisors and their direct reports. The kind that compromise professional judgment and create hostile work environments." Margaret opened the folder, revealing the same photographs Victoria had shown Sela, along with what appeared to be printed emails and text messages. We've received evidence suggesting you've been engaged in a sexual relationship with Mr. Ward. Is this accurate? Sella's mind raced. She could deny it, claim the photos were doctored or taken out of context. But the text messages, how had Victoria gotten those? I need to speak with a lawyer before I answer any questions. That's your right, Margaret said. But I should inform you that pending the outcome of this investigation, you're suspended without pay. Your access to company systems has been revoked, and you're not permitted on the premises except for official meetings. This is insane. Even if there were a relationship, which I'm not admitting, there's no company policy that explicitly forbids. There's a policy about disclosure, Victoria interrupted smoothly. Relationships between employees at different levels of authority must be reported to HR within 30 days. Failure to disclose can result in termination for cause. Sella felt the walls closing in. It was a policy buried deep in the employee handbook, one that most people never read because most people never imagined they'd need it. Where's Cassian? Does he know about this? Mr. Ward is in an emergency board meeting, Margaret said. He'll be informed of the situation once we've completed our preliminary investigation. As Sella gathered her few personal items under the security guard's watchful eye, she caught sight of Diana Rodriguez hovering by the elevator bank. Their eyes met briefly, and Diana gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head, a warning. The elevator ride down felt endless, 42 floors of descent, while her career and her relationship with Cassian crumbled around her. By the time she reached the lobby, her phone was buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. Somehow, the media had already gotten wind of the story. She escaped through the parking garage, her hands shaking as she started her car. Her phone rang, Cassian's number. "Are you okay?" His voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "I'm fine. Are you?" "I'm in hell. The board called an emergency session. Victoria told them about us, showed them the photos. She's claiming you were feeding confidential information to competitors." "What? That's insane. She has documentation, emails from your account to addresses at Meridian Corp and Blackstone Industries, technical specifications, client lists, strategic plans." Sella felt the bottom drop out of her world. "Cassian, I never sent those emails. I've never even heard of those companies." "I know that. But the emails exist, and they came from your computer. She set me up. She had access to everything. She could have sent those emails herself and made it look like they came from me." "I know, but proving it is going to be difficult." "What did you tell the board?" "The truth, that I am in love with you, that any relationship we have is consensual and has nothing to do with corporate espionage." His voice softened. "They've given me an ultimatum." "What kind of ultimatum?" "Distance myself from you completely, submit to an investigation and accept a formal censure, or step down as CEO." The words hit her like physical blows. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fight. For you, for us, for the truth. Cassian, you can't risk the company for me. The company isn't worth anything if I have to sacrifice who I am to keep it." Tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. This is exactly what Victoria wanted. She's destroying both of us. "Then we need to destroy her first." "How?" "She has fabricated evidence, the board's support, and—" "She has one weakness," Cassian interrupted. "She's arrogant. She thinks she's won, which means she'll get careless." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we need to find out who's really behind those emails. And I'm thinking Diana Rodriguez might be willing to help us." "Diana? Why would she risk her career?" "Because Victoria made a mistake. She accused you of sending information to Meridian Corp." "So?" "Diana's ex-husband works for Meridian. They went through a very messy divorce 2 years ago. If Victoria is claiming you sent sensitive information to Meridian, Diana might take that personally." Sella felt a flicker of hope. "You think Diana knows something?" "I think Diana has been watching Victoria very carefully, and I think she might be our way in." "What do you need me to do?" "Go home. Stay away from the office. Let me handle the board and Diana. But Sela." "Yes?" "Don't give up on us. This isn't over. After they hung up, Sela sat in her car in the parking garage, watching employees come and go through the building's glass doors. People she'd worked with for 3 years, who now probably thought she was a corporate spy and a seductress who'd manipulated her way into the CEO's bed. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should have taken my offer when you had the chance." Sela stared at the message, feeling something cold and determined settle in her chest. Victoria thought she'd won. She thought she'd successfully destroyed both Sela and Cassian with her web of lies and manipulation. She was about to learn just how wrong she could be. Sela typed back, "The game isn't over yet." Then she drove home to plan her counterattack, because if Victoria Chen wanted a war, she was about to get one. And this time, Sela wasn't playing by corporate rules. She was playing to win. Diana Rodriguez answered her door at 8 p.m. wearing yoga pants and a suspicious expression. "Sela, what are you doing here?" "I need your help." Sela stood on Diana's Lincoln Park doorstep, her breath visible in the cold night air. "And I think you need mine. If this is about what happened today, I can't get involved. I have a department to protect. Employees who depend on me." "Victoria Chen is setting up innocent people to take the fall for corporate espionage," Sela interrupted. "She fabricated evidence against me, and she used your ex-husband's company to do it." Diana's expression shifted from wariness to sharp interest. "Come inside." Diana's apartment was warm and lived in, a stark contrast to the corporate sterility they both inhabited during the day. Family photos covered the mantelpiece, and children's artwork hung on the refrigerator, reminders of the life Diana had built after her divorce. "Coffee?" Diana asked, but she was already moving toward the kitchen. "You look like you need it." "Diana, I know this is risky for you, but I think Victoria's been planning this for months, maybe longer. And I think you've suspected something." Diana handed her a steaming mug and settled across from her at the small kitchen table. "I've suspected Victoria of a lot of things. She's ambitious, ruthless, and she's been undermining Cassian since day one. But corporate espionage. The emails came from my computer, but I didn't send them. Someone with administrative access could have logged into my account remotely, sent those messages, then deleted them from my sent folder. Victoria doesn't have that kind of access." "No, but she could have had help. Someone in IT, someone she has leverage over." Diana was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "There's something I need to tell you about Meridian Corp." "What about it?" 3 months ago, my ex-husband called me. Drunk, angry, the usual routine, but he said something that stuck with me. He said he'd been getting calls from someone at Ward Industries, someone offering to sell client information. He thought it was hilarious that his ex-wife's company was corrupt. Sela felt her pulse quicken. "Did he say who was calling?" "No, but he mentioned it was a woman, someone who knew about our divorce, who used it to establish trust. She told him she understood what it was like to be screwed over by powerful men." "Victoria, that's what I started to think, but I had no proof. And accusing the CFO of espionage based on my drunk ex-husband's rambling seemed like career suicide." "What if we could get proof?" Diana leaned back in her chair, studying Sela's face. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking your ex-husband might be willing to make another call to his contact at Ward Industries. Maybe suggest a bigger deal, something that would require more detailed information. You want to set up a sting operation. I want to catch her in the act. If she thinks she's won, if she believes I'm completely discredited, she might get careless, especially if there's money involved." Diana was quiet for a long moment. "My ex-husband is a selfish bastard, but he's not stupid. If I ask him to help, he'll want something in return." "What kind of something?" "He's been trying to reduce his alimony payments for 2 years. If I agreed to a modification—" "Diana, I can't ask you to sacrifice your financial security for this." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Diana's voice was firm. "Victoria Chen has been poisoning that company for months. She's created a culture of fear and suspicion. People are afraid to speak up, afraid to innovate, afraid to take risks. That's not the Ward Industries I joined 5 years ago." And if this backfires, if we can't prove anything, then at least we tried. But Seller, if we're going to do this, we need to be smart about it. We need insurance. What kind of insurance? Diana pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts. I'm going to call someone who can help us. Someone with the technical expertise to make sure anything we record is admissible as evidence. Who? My brother-in-law. He's a cybersecurity consultant, specializes in corporate fraud investigation. If Victoria's been using company systems to commit espionage, he can find the digital fingerprints. As Diana made the call, Seller felt something she hadn't experienced in days. Hope. Real, concrete hope based on actionable plans rather than desperate wishes. Marcus can meet us tomorrow morning, Diana said after hanging up, but he wants to know something first. What's Cassian's position in all this? Is he willing to authorize a formal investigation? Seller's phone buzzed with a text from Cassian. Board meeting ended. Call me. Let me find out, she said, stepping into Diana's living room for privacy. How bad is it? She asked, when Cassian answered. Bad, but not insurmountable. The board voted to suspend me pending investigation, but it was close, 5-4. Victoria doesn't have complete control. Diana's willing to help. She has a plan to expose Victoria, but we need official backing. What kind of plan? Seller explained Diana's idea about the sting operation and the cybersecurity investigation. When she finished, Cassian was quiet for so long she thought the call had dropped. Cassian, I'm here. I'm just impressed. You two have put together a more comprehensive strategy in one evening than my lawyers managed in 6 hours. Is that a yes? That's a hell yes. But Seller, if this goes wrong, if Victoria realizes what we're doing, then we'll face the consequences together. That's what partners do. Partners? In business and in life, if you'll have me. Always. After they hung up, Seller returned to the kitchen to find Diana watching her with a knowing smile. So, Diana said, ready to take down the wicked CFO? More than ready. Good, because tomorrow we're going to war. Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness, unaware that in a small apartment in Lincoln Park, 3 people who refused to be defeated were planning the downfall of Victoria Chen. The game was about to change, and this time they were writing the rules. Victoria thought she'd won by destroying Seller's reputation and threatening Cassian's position. But she'd made one crucial miscalculation. She'd underestimated the power of people who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The reckoning was coming. 3 days later, Victoria Chen walked into what she believed would be her coronation as interim CEO. The board had called an emergency meeting, ostensibly to finalize Cassian's removal and address the security breaches that had rocked Ward Industries. Victoria had prepared a presentation outlining her vision for the company's future, more conservative, more profitable, more aligned with what she considered proper corporate values. She was about to discover that the meeting had a very different agenda. Thank you all for coming, announced Board Chairman Robert Morrison as Victoria took her seat at the polished conference table. Before we proceed with today's agenda, I believe Mr. Ward has some new information to present. Victoria's confidence flickered for just a moment. Cassian should have been suspended, banned from board meetings pending investigation, yet there he sat, looking composed and determined, with Seller beside him. Seller, who should have been facing criminal charges. Thank you, Robert, Cassian said, standing and moving to the presentation screen. Over the past week, we've been conducting an internal investigation into the alleged security breaches. What we discovered was illuminating. The first slide appeared on the screen, a financial record showing regular payments from Meridian Corp to a Delaware shell company. This company, Apex Consulting, was registered 6 months ago by someone using falsified documents. The payments total over $200,000 for what Meridian's records describe as strategic intelligence services. Victoria maintained her poker face, but Seller caught the slight tightening around her eyes. The second piece of evidence, Cassian continued, comes from our cybersecurity audit. A new slide showed digital forensics data. The emails allegedly sent by Mrs. Monroe were actually sent using administrative override protocols. Someone with high-level system access used her credentials to send confidential information, then deleted the evidence from her account. This is all very interesting, Victoria interjected smoothly. But it doesn't change the fact that security was compromised under your leadership, Cassian. These revelations only prove that our systems are vulnerable and our oversight inadequate. You're absolutely right, Cassian agreed. Which is why we decided to test those vulnerabilities. The boardroom door opened, and Diana Rodriguez entered with a man Sella recognized as Marcus, Diana's brother-in-law. Behind them walked two people Victoria definitely hadn't expected to see. FBI agents carrying briefcases and badges. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cassian said, "I'd like you to meet Special Agent Rebecca Torres and Special Agent David Kim. They've been conducting a parallel investigation into corporate espionage at Ward Industries." Victoria's composure finally cracked. "This is ridiculous. You can't seriously believe—" "Ms. Chen," Agent Torres interrupted, her voice professionally calm. "3 days ago, you received a call from Thomas Rodriguez at Meridian Corp., offering to purchase strategic information about Ward Industries' upcoming merger with Patterson Technologies. You agreed to sell that information for $50,000. I did no such thing. Actually, you did." Diana stepped forward, placing a small recording device on the table. "My ex-husband may be many things, but he's not stupid. When the FBI asked him to cooperate in exchange for immunity, he was more than willing to record your conversation." Agent Kim opened his briefcase, removing a laptop. "We also have records of your communications with Patterson's competitors, offering to sabotage the merger from the inside. That's when this moved from corporate espionage to conspiracy to commit fraud." "Play the recording," Board Chairman Morrison said quietly. Victoria's voice filled the conference room, clear and unmistakable. "The Patterson merger is worth at least $500 million. If you can guarantee that information reaches Richardson Holdings before the announcement, I can ensure the deal falls through. $50,000 is a small price for that kind of market advantage." "I was conducting a security test," Victoria said desperately. "I was trying to identify vulnerabilities in our—" "Ms. Chen," Agent Torres said, "you're under arrest for corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit fraud, and violation of federal trade secrets law." As the agents moved toward Victoria, she turned to stare at Sella with undisguised hatred. "You think you've won? You think this changes anything? You're still just a secretary who slept her way into relevance." "No," Sella said, standing slowly. "I'm a woman who refused to let fear make her choices. I'm someone who found love and decided it was worth fighting for. And I'm the person who brought you down." The room was silent, except for the sound of handcuffs clicking into place. "The charges against Mrs. Monroe are hereby dropped," Agent Torres announced. "She was instrumental in this investigation and has been cleared of any wrongdoing." After Victoria was escorted out, the board members sat in stunned silence. Finally, Chairman Morrison spoke. "Cassian, I believe we owe you an apology. And Ms. Monroe, we owe you our gratitude. What we owe each other," Cassian said, reaching for Sella's hand, "is honesty. Sella and I are in love. Our relationship began before any of this happened, and it will continue regardless of what this board decides about my future. We've done nothing wrong except fail to file the proper paperwork. And," Sella added, "fall in love in a conference room during a snowstorm." Despite everything, several board members smiled. "Well," Morrison said, "I think we can work around the paperwork issue. Motion to reinstate Cassian Ward as CEO with a formal commendation for Miss Monroe's service to the company." "Seconded," came voices from around the table. "All in favor?" Every hand in the room went up. 3 months later, Sella stood at the altar of a small church in Lincoln Park, wearing her grandmother's pearls and a dress that made her feel like the heroine of her own love story. Cassian waited for her at the end of the aisle, his eyes bright with tears and laughter. Do you, Sela Monroe, take this man to be your husband, in good times and in bad, in corporate crises and quiet moments, for as long as you both shall live? I do, she said, thinking of storms and candlelight and the courage it took to fight for love. You may kiss the bride. As Cassian's lips met hers, Sela heard Diana cheering from the front pew and felt the weight of everything they'd overcome. They'd faced down corruption, fought for truth, and emerged stronger than ever. Outside, snow began to fall, not the wild storm that had brought them together, but gentle flakes that promised new beginnings. And in that moment, surrounded by friends and family and the infinite possibility of their future together, Sela Monroe Ward knew that some fairy tales really do come true, especially the ones you're brave enough to write yourself. The end. Would you have the courage to risk everything for a forbidden love? Sela faced the most difficult choice of her life: stay safe in her job or fight for the man she loved, even knowing it could destroy her career and reputation. She chose love and truth, but had to face blackmail, public humiliation, and false accusations. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between safety and following your heart? Do you believe true love is worth any sacrifice, or are there limits we shouldn't cross? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.